Okay, so my name is Dave Thompson, as Diane mentioned, and I'm the NFUO Farm Labor Project Coordinator, and I'm coming to you from unceded Algonquin Anishinaabe territory. If you didn't do so when we began this day 2 of our AGM, I encourage you to share in the chat what traditional territory you are joining from. During treaty negotiations, Indigenous nations agreed to share the land with settlers, not to cede or surrender it. Land sharing is a commitment to honoring the treaty relationship, living together in peace, taking care of shared lands, and ensuring one another's well-being. Land sharing can take many forms, and NFU members, whether within the NFU's Indigenous Solidarity Working Group or as participants in the Saskatchewan Land Treaty Sharing Network, or on their own initiatives, have shown interest in developing deep land sharing relationships with the original peoples on this land. Today, we are excited to have a discussion of what one particular Indigenous settler land sharing relationship can look like. Now, initially, we had planned to have Celeste Smith, an Indigenous teacher, traditional seed keeper, and entrepreneur, speak about her project, the Cachagee, or We Will Plant Lodge project, a partnership with NFUO members Chuck and Linda Wilson of Ravens Wing Farm. Their project is a plan to build an ecological center on a permanent Indigenous stewarded site where Indigenous women and gender diverse people will relearn ancestral agricultural methods lost to civilization. Unfortunately, last-minute illness prevented Celeste from joining us. But she and the Wilsons look forward to sharing the project with the Region 3 membership in the near future. But don't despair. We are honored and humbled to welcome 2 speakers who agreed to speak with us last minute about their exciting Indigenous settler land sharing relationship. Welcome, Clarence Cachagee and Jenn Pfenning. Thank you for agreeing to share your story regarding the creation of Crow Shield Lodge. For those of you who were at National Convention in November, you might remember that Crow Shield Lodge was briefly highlighted as part of the Mystica video that opened convention. Today, we go behind the scenes and learn more. For this session, I'm going to briefly introduce each speaker and then pass it over to them to share their story. Feel free to pose questions in the chat, and we will have a question period following their presentations. Clarence Cakugee is the founder of Crow Shield Lodge. Clarence is from Waterloo Region and has an undeniable spirit for change. With a focus on working with the spirit within, he is a helper, visionary, and author who is known for investing his whole self into his community. Clarence originates from Chapleau Cree First Nation and calls Cambridge his home. He has faced his fair share of struggles and chooses to serve and support those living on the margins of society. Clarence continues to engage with his community through land-based teaching and healing as an Indigenous community educator, public speaking, and facilitating groups to encourage healing. Clarence says, and I quote, "It is said that Mother Earth has all the medicines for every disease there is. Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island are land-based people. We have received many of our teachings from the animals. Our creation stories are about Mother Earth and how we came to be. It is said that you can go anywhere on Turtle Island and find the medicine you need. Understanding land-based philosophies help us become better connected and feed our spirits." Clarence currently works as an Aboriginal Services Coordinator at Conestoga College and is the visionary behind Crow Shield Lodge, which is a place for reconciliation, land-based teaching, and healing. Now, Jenn Pfenning is a family owner and the Director of Human Resources, Marketing and Operations at Pfenning's Organic Farm in New Hamburg, Ontario. She enjoys working alongside local and migrant workers to produce food that serves her passion for healthy living, food justice, and strong community. Jenn is an active participant in boards and committees. She currently is an elected councillor for Wilmot Township. She is the past president of the National Farmers Union Local 340, Waterloo, Wellington, and served on the Food Share Toronto Board of Directors for 7 years. She also served on the Waterloo Region Food System Roundtable and is the past president of the Organic Council of Ontario. Presently, Jenn is the Canadian representative on the Migration Collective of the International Peasant Movement, La Via Campesina, and chair of the NFU Migrant Worker Solidarity Working Group. But this impressive resume does not include yet another one of her commitments, and the one she will be sharing with us today, her relationship with Clarence and her support for the creation of Crow Shield Lodge. So without further ado, take it away, Clarence and Jenn.
All right, Dave. Thank you for that kind and thoughtful introduction. I appreciate that. My name is Clarence Cachagee, and I want to thank everybody for being here today and for gifting me, I guess gifting us, with some of your time. I believe the best gift that we can ever give is a gift of our time, because we're never going to get that back. We're giving something so important away that is connected to our lives that we're never going to get it back. So I want to say thank you to each and every one of you for gifting me and us with some of your time today. I'm going to introduce myself with my spirit name. Wache Ane Boju Sego. I am Kiwe Tenway in the Ne. It translates into North Windman. I'm from the people of the Mushkegowuk, people of the river, Fox Lake Reserve, Chapeau Cree First Nation Bear Clan, and I am a beautiful person. In order to get to that last part where I am a beautiful person, that took many, 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 many years. Because I was lost, I was broken, I didn't have any purpose, meaning, or direction in my life. A bit of an overview about who I am. I'm part of the 60 Scoop. My father was in the residential schools, my aunts and uncles were in the residential schools, my grandmother was in the residential schools, and my sister and myself are part of the 60 Scoop. That's how I ended up in Waterloo Region. I love this place. I really do. I feel so connected to the region of Waterloo because there's a lot of really, really good things. And there's a lot of leaders and there's a lot of beginnings that are happening in Waterloo Region. And when we talk about new beginnings, I've been using this feather a lot. Some of you just might think this is a white feather, but actually, this is a tail feather from an eagle. And this is all about direction. This is what gives the eagle direction, the tail feathers. So, being that we're on a new direction, I've been using this a lot because this helps me to stay connected to my culture. And this helps me to start sharing with people about a new beginning that has taken place in Wilmot. And a new beginning has taken place with my sister, Jenn Pfenning. Now, you see that I call her my sister because Jenn is my sister. We've known each other for a couple of years, and I love her. Now, how awesome is that to say that I love Jenn like a sister? Because, you know, growing up, I was brought up by the Mennonites. I was brought up on a farm. And I stayed with that family, that foster family, for 13 years. At that time, I knew I was different. At that time, we were not giving any exposure or information as to regarding who we were or what we were connected to. When we'd inquire to our social workers about our identity, they would confirm that we were Indigenous, and they would just give us a little bit of information about our parents. The information they released to me about my dad was that he was in the residential schools. Odds are that he is an alcoholic living on the streets of Toronto or somewhere, or he's deceased. When I asked information about our mother, they gave us her last name, and that was it. So growing up on a farm, it was challenging for me. It was challenging for me because I was so isolated, and I knew that there was a connection out there, and I was looking for it. So at a very age, I started to run away. I started to run away. But I really don't think I was running away. I think I was running to. I think I was running to find a sense of belonging. I think I was running to find my family. And I think I was running to find a connectedness that I knew was there. Because even at a young age, I've always had a connectedness to the land. And I didn't even know I was Indigenous, but I felt so at home exploring on the land. You know, growing up on a farm, I never got hurt. I never got hurt because my foster father would always show me the consequences for getting too close to a manure tank and the gases in it, the consequences for the gases in a silo, the consequences that happens when you get too close to an auger. So all of these things were really cool growing up, but I just felt so isolated. So that's when things started to change for me. I've been down many paths. I've been down many roads. I've attained I was fortunate enough to have the Canadian dream, I guess, with a wife, beautiful wife and children and the white picket fence. Well, I had that for a while and then I lost it. Just because of all of the intergenerational things that I've had to live with. But that's not why we're here today. We're here today to talk about Crowshield Lodge. Crowshield Lodge is all about reconnecting people back to the land. As land-based people, as Indigenous people, we are the land and the land is us. We have a connection to the land like nobody else. We are stewards of the land. We do not own the land. That's the difference in between Indigenous people and other people, where we talk about stewardship, other people talk about ownership. As a matter of fact, as Indigenous people, we don't own anything. We have a lot of really, really sacred and special things that we get to hold on to, but in time, we get those away. And that's what we're supposed to do. And we also follow by the teachings of the 7 grandfathers, which is honesty, humility, truth, bravery, wisdom, love, and respect. But none of those teachings can be applied without courage. And that's what we're talking about today, really, is courage. You know, a couple of years ago, the lodge was out by Guelph, Ontario, up by Eden Mills. I guess you could say we did a pilot project out there. We were there for a couple of years. We built a teaching lodge, 55 feet long. We were doing sweats out there, but it wasn't in our region. So I started talking to some people, and I wanted to try to bring the lodge back to Waterloo region. And I have a friend of mine who gave me a couple names. He just said, "Here, Clarence, I don't know these people, but they might connect with you, and they might have in Waterloo region." So the first person I connected with through a cold email was Jenn Pfenning. I was just rolling the dice, seeing if she had land, seeing even if she would entertain a discussion about Crowshield Lodge coming to their property. Lo and behold, you know, I think it was maybe a day or a couple hours after I sent that initial email, Jenn got back to me, and that's how our relationship started. It was exciting. And once I told Jenn and her husband Eck about the vision that I had, they said, "Clarence, I know that we want to walk with you on this journey." So Jenn and Eck, they showed us a couple sites. They were near a river, a floodplain, very beautiful sites. And then Jenn said, "Clarence, we have another spot in our back forest." So we went back there, and we looked around. We put some tobacco down, and it felt right. It felt right. So then I brought 3 Indigenous women in, and Jenn. I gave them all some tobacco, And I gave them a little gift, and I asked the 4 women to come together to connect with themselves, connect with the land, and find the 4 locations where we're going to build a teaching lodge, where we're going to put up a teepee, where we're going to put up our cooking tent, and where we're going to put our sacred sweat lodge site. So within hours, they found those 4 locations, and then we slowly and very respectfully started coming out to the land to prepare it. Now, we didn't bring a whole team of 100 people in, which we could have done, and we could have got it all done in a weekend. But that's not what we do as Indigenous people, because we have such a strong connection to the land. We don't do that. So what we did is we would come out to the bush where we were going to start building our land-based site, and we would spend about 3 or 4 hours, preparing the site, doing what we needed to do, and then we would leave. And then we would let the earth, we would let it recover and recuperate, because actually we were shocking it. So then we'd come back a week or 2 later, and this is what we started to do. But we always do this in a very mindful and a very respectful way, because our mother, the earth, gives us everything that we need. She gives us medicine, she gives us places to do our ceremonies, she provides us with water, she provides us grandfather, she provides us with wood. Everything that we need as Indigenous people comes from the land. So that's why we always treat the land so respectfully and so delicately, because it's a very delicate ecosystem, and you can't just take one thing away and think that it's not going to be affected. So once we started to build, they came. That's as easy as it is. We put up those 4 structures, which also coincide with the pillars of Crow Shield Lodge, which the 4 pillars of Crow Shield Lodge are healing, education, land stewardship, and reconciliation. Last summer, we utilized our teaching lodge to its full potential. I think we had about 300 people out on the land. We got them reconnected with the land. We presented to them through an Indigenous lens what allyship was. We presented to them through an Indigenous lens. Well, it wasn't through an Indigenous lens. Reconciliation. Jenn was actually one of the facilitators to talk to these groups about reconciliation. Then, through an Indigenous lens, we brought in facilitators to talk about the child welfare system through an Indigenous lens. And then at the end, we talked about new beginnings. And it was amazing, because we systematically picked out leaders from our region and we invited them out to Crow Shield Lodge. And from doing that awareness series in October, it put Crow Shield Lodge on the map. Crow Shield Lodge is a registered nonprofit with charitable status. Yeah, and we're insured. Like, everything we have done has been to the book. And we can't say enough about what this is doing for our region. What it's doing for our region is that it's awoken people up. This is a time for healing, not only for Indigenous, but non-Indigenous people. So after we were running for a few months, we noticed that the need for healing was so great that we needed a second site. So we started looking for a second site. The site the Pfennings have is amazing, it's beautiful, it's special. But it can't service all the people that need to be healed. So hopefully by June 1st, we're going to have a second site. And that's our second phase. But then in our third phase, we're actually looking for some land to build a healing lodge. We've been working with an architect for the past 3 years. We have renderings, we have drawings. What we need to find is land so that we can bring a healing lodge to this region. So I've been in conversation with the region. I've been in conversation with the city. Been putting a lot of tobacco down, doing a lot of praying. And the time is ripe for this to happen right now. What we're doing is we're bringing Indigenous and non-Indigenous people together. We're creating a safe place where people can lean into these hard discussions. At Crow Shield Lodge, we do not blame and we do not shame. But what we do is we talk about the truth. We call people into the truth. And we never call them out, but we call them in. And with creating a safe place and a space on the land, so many great discussions are happening. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jenn and let her talk about some of those good discussions and through her lens, which she has seen. So I want to thank you. Guinness Comatin. Naho.
Thank you so much for being here, Clarence. And I can't say how amazingly grateful I am that that roll of the dice brought us together. My own journey, my family farm, we farm organically. And so a lot of the concepts of land stewardship that Clarence has talked about really resonate with how we approach being farmers. We don't see ourselves so much as owning land as being the stewards of it. And I was actively seeking a way to connect to some Indigenous people in the community to share our land, which Clarence, of course, didn't know when he sent that email. So it was a beautiful moment of serendipity when I received his email and talked to him, and just, you know, everything that he said resonated so much with everything about how I view our land and engagement with the land. And so it was a really, I'm not going to say it was easy, because, you know, when we think about land ownership, the way that it's structured in society and in the system we live in, we are taught to feel possessive and to want to keep people out. And that's the sort of way that society approaches it. So it's a big thing to consider having people on your land and not approaching that conversation from that ownership position, but from a partnership and sharing perspective. And it requires us as settlers to change our lens, to understand and see things differently. But I think if we can all get there, we will all benefit. So when Clarence came to me, and it was such a beautiful vision that our whole family wanted to participate, wanted to do whatever we could to support and help move it forward. And it has been such an incredible gift. You know, a lot of times people thank us for what we've done or how we're going about it. And I keep saying that for me, it's been much more of a receiving than a giving. You know, it's been so incredibly beautiful to be able to be honored to be part of this, to receive that honor of connecting and engaging. And it just, well, I smile like an idiot all the time about it. I really hope that we can see more of these projects. And it hasn't, you know, it didn't all just happen smoothly. As we all know, the colonial system we all live in has rules about what can be done where and what you can do with your land, even as a farmer. And so this project faced some legal hurdles in being described potentially as a commercial site. And I argued with our development services, both at the municipal, at the township level and at the region level. And there's a provision for a secondary use. And so any of you farmers out there who are interested in hosting a site like this and having a partnership like this and sharing your land, that's what you need to think about. That's how you need to describe it, is a secondary use, and have your development services, your building department deem it a secondary use on farmland, which is permitted. The building code doesn't apply because the structures built to Indigenous traditional methods are not considered structures as far as the building code goes. So that's not an issue. But that land use one can become an issue. If we want to see reconciliation happening across our country, this is what we have to do. We have to find the ways to share. We have to find ways that it can't be threatened by bureaucracy and it can't be threatened by rules. And if the rules do threaten it, we have to change the rules. And that was something I was willing to do. And unfortunately, I didn't have to because we were able to find that pathway. You know, our community has had a lot of intense conversations. And what's come from this is so many people have come to me and said, how do I get involved? How can I be part of Crow Shield? How can I participate? Can I volunteer? Can I come to events? And the only thing that's held a lot of it back is being able to host as many people as we want with the pandemic restrictions on gathering. I think we're getting close to time. And I'm not sure if there's anything else that I need to cover with.
No, I think we covered everything. It was a good overview. Does anybody have any questions that Jen and I could possibly help answer? Or is anybody interested in something like this?
I think we've got a question here from Katie. So we'll field questions. Either put them in the chat or raise your hand and we'll get to you in turn. Katie?
Thank you. Thanks for a fantastic presentation. This is an area that I've been interested in for a few years and haven't really had space to dedicate, capacity, I guess, to dedicate is a better way to put it. One question I have from when you're talking about, permits and land use and stuff like that, what about insurance?
So Crow Shield Lodge has insurance. It could be covered under your farm's insurance depending on the particular project, but Clarence can speak to the process for insurance for the lodge.
Yeah, we got insurance for the lodge and then we wrote you in. Is that right?
Yeah, so it's an additional insured. So when Crow Shield Lodge got the insurance, then they add Pfenning's farm as an additional insured. Anybody with farm businesses, we all have to add certain of our customers or partners that we work with as additional insured. It's the same thing for the Crow Shield Lodge project. Does that answer your question, Katie?
I'm going to presume it did. It was very thorough, everyone. Alyssa, I think you're next in line for a question here.
Hello, I have a question on how, as a settler, you were able to change your view on ownership of the land to a partnership. Like, what was that process like for you? Did it involve changing your language or some unlearning?
I suppose I have a little bit of a head start on that ownership concept change because I haven't life in Canada. I was born here and I'm a Canadian citizen, but I've lived outside of the country. And there are parts of the world where land ownership is not practiced the way it is here or the way it is in Europe. There are areas that are referred to as tribal areas. And so the nation, the Indigenous nation that has historically lived in that space owns that land, holds power over the use of that land. And for example, in northern Namibia, the land is held by the tribe, and the Council of Elders decides who can use what pieces of it. So the way that ownership works is that you can't be a settler, you can't be, you have to be an Indigenous person, Indigenous to that tribe and to that area. For example, my stepmother, because my father's over there and married. So when my stepmother and my father wanted to build a house, they went to the council and said, you know, this piece of land is not being used by anyone, and we would like to build here. And the council says, okay, what are you going to do with it? And, you know, there's a process. And then they said, okay, it's granted that you can use that land. And the way that the use functions is that is their land for all intents and purposes to build on, to farm, to use in any way they see fit, as long as they live. They can't sell it. They can't give it away. They can't transfer it to anyone else in any way except a child. So a child can inherit. So, but if the heirs or the children of that couple, that person, don't wish to take that land on, it reverts to the tribe and can then be given to somebody else for use. And so there's no monetizing of land, monetizing of that land access. So being familiar with that as a concept and seeing how it works, and it's not perfect, you know, there are issues with that, but that's how, for me, the idea was introduced, you know, by experience. And so when I look at the original treaties here, they were based on that similar thought process. You know, there are differences, of course, but the general concept of, you know, we don't own this land, but we're going to use it for this. And when we're done, somebody else, or, you know, and it can shift. The other thing with philosophy, as an organic farmer, a lot of the things that we do and the ways we make decisions about how we farm our land is about leaving the land in a better condition and being stewards. That, you know, we have to walk carefully, we have to farm carefully to not destroy the land that we are stewards of. So, sorry, I could talk about these. Does that answer your question?
It was a great question, Elisa, and a great answer, Jen, that I'm sure, yeah, as you said, you could have a long conversation and a whole extra panel on, I imagine. Our next question is coming from Earl Johnson. Earl Johnson, go ahead.
Thanks very much, folks, for your presentation. The area that I live in southwestern Ontario, Chatham, Kent, we're into a major controversy here having to do with land stewardship, especially regarding our forest cover. And Indigenous people are involved with those of us that are attempting to try and straighten this situation out, but our opposition is property rights, and those that have that political agenda are really bearing down on us, and they have been for a long time now. But we're part of the Delaware Nation in this part of the country, and I'm just wondering if we could reach out to you folks, if you could maybe give us some help or advice in the situation we're in. That it literally involves the entire community here, farmers and the rest of the citizens. And after hearing you folks talk, we'd certainly like to reach out to you if you'd be willing to speak to us.
Certainly. I think maybe Dave can pop our emails in the chat and we can connect.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Earl. Tim.
Wonderful. Thanks, Earl. Next question's coming from Tim, and then we've got one in the chat. Go ahead, Tim Wilson.
Hi, guys. Thanks so much for your talk, Clarence and Jen. It's nice to hear this. And I used to live in Wilmot area, so it's good to hear that things are happening there. We've now moved back to the sandy soils of Norfolk County, where, you know, we were in the original Six Nations Grand River area. And I still find evidence of peoples moving across the earth. Arrowheads, broken things that come to the surface through frost. It's really neat to sort of see that we're not the first and we won't be the last. And so this builds on the prior question of how to build information and knowledge, I guess, in that some of us are numb to this, and the approach that you've given us here is very interesting, but we're still paralyzed. Like, we don't know how to react, or we don't have the ability to make partnerships that make it genuine. So do you offer the ability to come out to places and do outreach and, you know, teach us how to rear the next generation of how this might work? I think it could be a great methodology for you, and people like us down in our home in native sand, whose native sand isn't actually ours, might learn from you. So do you do outreach, I guess, is my main question. And that would kind of answer Earl's previous question through being able to chit chat with the people involved. Because you'll need local champions. You can't be everywhere with everyone all the time. Well, you can try, but you're only going to go bananas.
Yeah, you stretch yourself too thin if you try to do everything, that's for sure.
Outreach. I think we do inreach. That's what we do. We call people in, right? We call them in. We've created a space. We've created, it's a safe, welcoming space that holds 20 people. We call them in, right? We have created a space where we can educate, where we can help people unlearn, and where we can come together as equals, I
think one of the challenges that a lot of well-intentioned settlers have is that because of the discrimination and because of the intentional erasure of Indigenous existence and history, we often don't see Indigenous peoples or Indigenous circles in our communities. They may be there, but they're hidden. And it is a horrific thought to me, but it's true, that there are a lot of people who don't feel safe because they have experienced discrimination based on their indigeneity. And so sometimes that can be a hard thing to find people to connect with. And that's one of the things that I think Crow Shield Lodge really has done very well, is providing a space for people to connect with. And I'd encourage anybody who's interested in figuring out how to be an ally and how to reach out to the Indigenous community around you, to check out the Facebook page. There are some videos that have been posted from Crow Shield Lodge. And in fact, there's another video happening later today. So if you're on Facebook, I know not everyone is, but it's a good spot to get some more information about that. And, you know, as we go, I'm sure we'll hold more events here where people can come and learn and hear.
Well, it'd be great if we could get 20 people from this group to come out. In the, you know, you could come out in the winter, spring, summer, fall. It doesn't matter to us. We're always on the land. The elements really don't bother us because there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad gear.
Yeah. Yeah. Make sure you have warm enough boots and jackets and you're good.
Yeah,
But hey, we're all farmers, right? So we know about that.
that's right.
Huh. So yeah,
We have
that's something that if there's interest, maybe we can talk about.
There's a couple of great questions here in the chat too. Maybe we can answer a couple of those since we still have some time, Clarence and Jen. The first is coming from Brian Dale, and he's asking, are there policies or government initiatives that you feel would help these kinds of initiatives expand? I think this is a great question.
Absolutely. I'm gonna see, Clarence, do you have any thoughts on the policies? Okay.
No,
Well,
policies make my head hurt.
that's fair. That's fair. Writing them is really tedious, and sometimes trying to figure out how to follow them is even more tedious. So creating more enabling legislation around land use to specifically and intentionally enable, not just remove barriers, but enable land sharing, and creating, and I don't have the language to put on it, but it's something that we need to work on, figuring out the, in this colonial system that we all live in of land ownership. Land ownership is very much monetized and restrictive in a way, so there's all sorts of rules about how you can hold title and what you can do if you hold title or not, and it creates insecurity for relationships like this, because unless I haven't yet figured out how to write a document that solidifies the access to the land. We have an understanding, and I, on behalf of my family, have pledged that we will not withdraw access. But if, for whatever reason, maybe I get hit by a bus tomorrow and my children, my kids are actually pretty happy about this arrangement, so they would keep it. But if that weren't the case, then the lodge could lose access, because with ownership comes ultimate power. So we have to find a way to create a policy that is a framework for acknowledging and respecting and supporting relationships like this that share that land, without triggering all sorts of other legal requirements and monetary requirements. But Brian, I know that you have some really brilliant skills in that area, so maybe that's something we can talk about.
That's great. Thank you, Jen. I think you kind of answered the other question in the chat, and this is coming from Cassie Weber, and she says, first, thank you so much for this fantastic presentation and land sharing model. It's very inspiring. And then she asks about whether you had a formalized written agreement, which I think you've just sort of addressed. But she also asked, did you do a ceremony or have another way of formalizing how you agreed to share the land? So maybe you can speak to that a little bit. If there was a way that you formalized it with each other and feel like it's binding, not necessarily under the law, but at least between the two of you or amongst the community.
Well, I think when you talk about a ceremony, we did bring Jenn in right at the beginning. Jenn and Eck have always been, part of the planning, with strategic planning, moving things forward, or maybe not moving things forward. Maybe we have to just, like, there was a time that I almost thought about pulling everything down, because they said that Crow Shield Lodge was was in violation of some codes, right? And the last thing I wanted was to jeopardize this relationship we have. So I didn't want the Pfennings to start getting fines, because that's where we were at, because we couldn't figure it out. But then it got figured out. And in regards to the agreement that we have, it's an open agreement. It's a living agreement, like a true living agreement. You know, spitting a handshake or a hug, that's the agreement. The lines of communication are always open. Like Jenn and I, we don't always have easy conversations, but we have truthful, honest conversations, and we respect each other, because that's the way that we're going to move forward in harmony as equals, walking down a new road of understanding. Because the road of understanding that we're on right now, we're going to come to a fork in the road, and the road we're on right now isn't going to last too much longer, because there's pollution, the natural resources are being depleted. There's all of these things happening. Global warming, people are finally waking up to that. But if we don't stop doing what we're doing, this planet is not going to be around too much longer. So that's what we have. It's our right and it's our responsibility as Indigenous people, as stewards of the land, to create these spaces, to welcome people in, to start talking about these issues that are right in front of our face. And some people can see them, but some people are still blind to them.
And I think, that's really important what Clarence says about this road we're on. And we as an organization, National Farmers Union, we have recognized that for quite some time. And the paper that was published in 2019 about how solving the climate crisis and the farm income crisis were linked. Well, we can add another piece to that. Reconciliation is also part of the same solutions. Reconciliation forms part of how we address climate change. It forms part of how we address income on farms and the problems that we have there. So by working together, we actually make all of the changes that we need, which is a digression from the answer to the question. But
and with Crow Shield Lodge, it's all about relationship. And it's all about spirit. It's all spirit led. And as you can tell, the relationship that we have is pretty solid, because someone canceled, one of your speakers canceled. Jenn reached out to me last night and she said, Clarence, I know this is late and I don't know if you can do this, but all I had to do was look at my calendar. I had an opening. So I said, yes, I can do this. Of course. That's the way relationships should work. I know that Jenn has a hard time asking, but she's getting better at that. We're working through that. And I have a hard time asking too. But it's because of that ask that I had and that courage that I had, it brought us to today. It brought us to today. And with Crow Shield Lodge, in June, we're going to be 1 year old. And we have far surpassed our predictions for our first year. Once we're 1 year old in June, we hope to be breaking ground for our second site. And if you know any farmers, anybody around the region of Waterloo that could donate some land to us for a healing lodge, that's what we're looking for. That's what we're looking for. That'll be phase 3. So maybe that'll be in the 3rd year.
Just incredible, Clarence and Jenn. I again, that was a lovely way, I think, of wrapping up this session. I'm sure there are many more thoughts and questions. People are feeling really inspired. I'm hoping someone answers your call, Clarence, that's in the region. That was a great pitch at the end. I'm sure that there are many of our members across Region 3 who would love to be able to host and participate in similar projects. So I'm hoping we'll have lots of these conversations moving forward.